My name is Alan Glickenhouse. I'm the API business strategist for IBM. So what that means is my job is to help you all be successful with your API initiatives. I'm not product focused, although I work on the product team. We have a product that is an API management product. I actually ran into someone here this week that didn't know that. Shows you how good the IBM marketing team is. We are an API management vendor. We have the leading market share according to IDC. Gartner has us in the leaders quadrant, and there will be a Forrester Wave report coming out next week, which I encourage you to read, that shows us pretty well also. That's all I'm going to say about our product. Okay, so this is about use cases. And really what I do with businesses is help them understand the business drivers for API initiatives, help them communicate that from IT into the business to get the business involved, talk about a methodology for creating good use cases and really help you be successful in driving the initiative. So I thought, well, what's better than learning from your mistakes? And the answer, of course, is not making mistakes. So one of the things that I do see is one of the biggest problems in this area is, especially in a centralized IT type environment, is that they don't want to make a mistake. Right, and this is not about not making mistakes. This is about getting out there and trying something and iterating on it, and you've heard that from a lot of speakers through all this conference. What it is about is learning from other people's mistakes, and I've written a blog on that, 7 biggest mistakes that companies make on their API initiatives. At the end of this, by the way, there's a tremendous amount of links of things that I've written, and we're going to get you the copy of this presentation, so you'll get all these links. But that's not today's topic either. Today's topic is learning from other people's successes, right? So we can learn from other people's successes, learn from their mistakes, and hopefully make some of our own, and then move forward, right? So that's the plan. So the agenda here that I thought would be a good one was to start talking about business drivers. In my view, if you don't know why you're doing something, then we really need to step back, right? So what am I seeing from the conversations that I'm having with all the businesses that I talk to as far as what they're trying to get out of an API initiative? So I've identified 4 key business drivers. We'll talk about those. Then I've identified 7 use case categories, and we'll talk about the 7 use case categories fairly quickly because we do have a short time here. And I'll introduce you to the methodology that I use when I'm discussing use cases with a business. And so you can apply that use case methodology yourself if you like it. And then we'll get into some real client examples, which is what we told this topic was going to be, right? So we'll actually show you some examples, and I'll identify back which business drivers they're focused on. And then the end is really just a lot of resources and where we're seeing things going from this moving forward. So the first of the business drivers is something that I've heard spoken about here at the conference this week and years now, is speed to market, right? So there's a traditional problem between the business and IT where business wants something today, goes to IT and says, we want this, and they tell them 6 months, 12 months, whatever answer that nobody likes, right? So we've tried over decades to fix this problem in IT by making IT run faster. So we do things to raise the granularity that people work at, and I saw people presenting on that this week, from machine language to higher level languages to, things that are even higher than that. And we did things like service-oriented architecture and BPM, and all these things were to get IT to move faster so we could deliver things to the business faster. You can never be fast enough for what the business wants, because the business wants it now, and IT can't make a change now because, as the guys from the BBC said, I can't have an outage, right? So if I change something every day, sooner or later I'm going to make a mistake. There's going to be a security exposure, something like that. So instead of trying to make IT run in a now kind of a pattern, what we can do is let IT run at the correct speed for IT to control the changes in the back-end systems, but let business run at the speed that they want to run at for things that are engaging with the clients. And so we do that by packaging up the assets from the back-end systems as APIs, and then make those available to business developers to do things that they want to do at the business level at the speed that they feel is acceptable for making changes. And so we call this multi-speed integration. Gartner calls it bimodal IT. Every vendor has a name for it. It's the same thing, that we let these things happen at the correct speed for what they're trying to do. So that's the first business driver. Almost every business that I speak to starts in this area, and then they move forward to other things. One of which is reach. So how do we extend our reach? So today, we introduce our products to customers either in person, they come to a physical location where we have a business, a bank, a retail store, something like that, or they come to our website and they're engaging us, right? We've somehow got them to come to us. And this has been an age-old challenge in business with channels. People don't want to give up the idea that a customer will come to them, right? I want to engage my client, I want to show them how wonderful I am and all that. And that's great, but there's a whole bunch of customers that just aren't doing it, right? They're just not coming to us for whatever reason. And I want to get my offerings in front of them as well. And so how do I engage with people that aren't coming to me? And that, of course, again, is APIs. And we can, mobile apps, of course, people are still coming to me if they're coming with my mobile app. But through partnering, through third party, through social networks, or maybe even through devices, we can reach out and engage customers that aren't looking for my website or my physical location. Let me give you an example. If I want to buy a car, I don't go to a bank, or I don't go to an insurance company. I go to a place that sells cars, right? But when I buy a car, I need insurance for the car, and I need possibly a bank loan. So why not, as a bank or an insurance company, partner with people who sell cars or houses or other things that need banking or insurance, so that when you sell your car, I will give you my APIs so that you can offer my loans instead of my competitors. And now I've got another channel to market, which gets me additional customers. And so this partnering, reaching model is, I think, in the long run, going to be one of the biggest areas for APIs from a business perspective, and where we can really get the business engaged. I call this the business next door. Every business has a business next door. When I go to meet with a company, I try to think about what are the businesses next door for them that they can engage with to get more customers to do what they're trying to do. So I mentioned there are 4 business drivers. I won't spend as much time on the last 2. Speed is the first one, reach is the second one. The third one is innovation, sometimes around devices, IoT. It doesn't have to be devices. But this is similar to speed in many ways. If you think about the idea of speed to market, it's taking the assets you have in your back-end systems today and allowing the business to do something with them in a new business offering. But what if you don't have the asset in your existing systems today? What if I want to try something new and innovate? The idea of changing a back-end system to try something new that we don't know is going to work is very expensive and very risky. So I want to be able to try something at a low-cost, high-speed, low-risk way, and again, the way to do that is through APIs and microservices. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that one today, but there's a paper at the end that I can point you to on that. And then the last one is something I call domains. Domains is about sharing your assets across your enterprise. The BBC guys, again, you paid the penalty of going right before me. But you said you have multiple lines of business that do things independent of one another. That is not uncommon, right? Almost every business has multiple lines of business that do things independently. But there's benefits to sharing things across these businesses, from gathering customers that are doing something in one area and promoting things in another area, having a single view of the customer, whatever, right? So domains can be physical domains where you're dealing with geographies or cloud and on-premise, or more likely is lines of business where you're having multiple lines of business. An example here for me is my insurance company that didn't think of me as one person when I had auto, home, and so on, and I'd have to log on and get into different parts that didn't know about each other, right? So we can fix all that with APIs. So last year, I worked with Forrester on something called the Total Economic Impact Study. They went out and surveyed a whole bunch of IBM customers. We don't know who they surveyed, and they didn't know it was IBM, on the business value that they were getting from their APIs. And they asked, and the reason I put this up here is for the 6 categories. So these were the 6 categories of project types that Forrester asked the customers about. The first four, you see the word internal in front of. That means that the audience for the APIs were inside the company. And then the last two are partnering and public. So what I did was take these 6 categories, add one more, which is devices, and came up with a methodology around these 7 categories for thinking about API projects that a business might do. And the next 2 pages, which I'm not going to spend a tremendous amount of time on, are kind of my cheat sheet of questions that I think about for what might a business do in each of these 7 categories. Some of them, I think, are pretty understandable. Mobile, you know what that is, social, data and analytics. Other needs a little explanation. So other is regulatory requirements like PSD2, industry standards, audit, security, this idea of sharing assets across the domains. All of that kind of fits into the other category. So let me just walk you through one of them just to give you a feel. So the 2 biggest areas that companies get started in is mobile and data. Those are the ones that I see most customers starting in. At a mobile scenario, my firm belief is that you think about this from the customer perspective, not from the inside IT systems. So think about what things would a mobile developer want as APIs to put on their mobile app that customer is going to want to see. And I think about 3 different kinds of things. One are generic type information, like what are your products that you offer, what are your prices, where are you located, things like that, right? That anybody who comes to their mobile app would want get the same answer. But then there would be customer-specific information, like what's the order status for my product, or what's my bank account balance, right, where I have a different answer than someone else when I come there. So those are kinds of things that I think about that the mobile app developer will want APIs for. And then the last category is the combination of some characteristic of the mobile device with the APIs. And so GPS coordinates, camera, near-field communication, something that the device can do that can provide a value-added benefit of it being on a mobile device, right? So as I engage with any business in any industry, these are the kind of questions that I generically think about, and then I'll go out and research that company and come up with a couple of examples of things that they might do. And I run through that for all 4 of these, and the next page, partnering, public, and devices. Devices sometimes not applicable, depending on the company that we're talking about. So all of this is documented in a series of blogs that I wrote on the 4 business drivers and 7 use case categories, and you can read that after this session. So I'm halfway through, and I haven't gotten to a single customer use case yet, but that's coming next. So in my mind, when we think about use cases, it's good to understand what other people have done, but it's more important to understand what you should do, right? And so we can learn from other people's mistakes, and we can learn from patterns of what other people have done, but that may not be what you should do, right? So I think that this is a more important part of the presentation to understand and think about what use cases might be applicable to you. So having said that, let's talk about what some other people have done. Walmart is focused on speed. And so there's a YouTube video. Again, when you get this, you can click on that link, and it's the Walmart folks talking about this. 99% decrease in time needed to deliver resources to developers. Went from 5 days to 10 seconds. This is a tremendous value. I was just up in the booth area right before this chatting with some of my fellow IBMers about this exact example. The IT folks sometimes are afraid to go to the business and say, we have this API thing, we can do things with you and be very successful. This is an example of taking the pressure off IT to deliver things that used to take 5 days, and now the business people go access it themselves in 10 seconds, right? So the IT resource level goes down in needing to support the business developers instead of up. So tremendous value here that Walmart got from this. I never can say this name right. Raiffeisen Bank. Maybe I got that right. I don't know. So obviously here in Europe, especially, PSD2 is a big deal, and so every bank is focusing on PSD2 and meeting the PSD2 regulatory requirements. You have to do it. But most of the banks that are really being successful in this area are looking beyond just PSD2 compliance. And so Raiffeisen Bank introduced several things, a mobile app, the idea of managing the different geographies that they were in different ways. So they have a central IT location in Austria that manages their local environment, but they're in other countries as well. And to support the other countries, they went with a cloud approach, and they have them all integrated together through their APIs. So it's an example of the geographic domains thing that I was chatting about. So there is a bank here in the Nordics that is also doing things. They've done quite a few very good things. First of all, APIs for mobile to get out to their customer set, and they have a 90% mobile market penetration in their home country for their mobile app. So doing quite well with that, and that's a speed to market kind of thing. But in addition to that, they made their payment offerings available to merchants to directly make payments using these APIs. And this was a less expensive way than the credit card type charges that a merchant would have. And so, so being able to do this was good for everyone. And then they also made this offer to other distribution partners, other banks, who are using their same payment capabilities. And so this is a way of reaching out through third parties to get their offerings in front of more people than they could ever get to before by just having them come only to their bank, right? So this is a great reach example of bank doing way more than PSD2. Different part of the world. Yes Bank is a bank from India. Fairly small bank in India, and they decided that in order to get better market penetration, they were going to go after a particular niche scenario, which is a rather large one, actually, if you think about the number of Indian citizens that are working in different countries around the world other than India. And so they're going after Indian citizens that are working in various other parts of the world to let them bank like they're at home. And so this is a very attractive thing, and they've gotten really good exposure and reach through this scenario. This is a marketplace scenario. I don't know how many companies I talk to that want to have an API marketplace. They don't even want to have their own APIs. They just want to have a marketplace, right? I was dealing with one of these just a week or so ago. So one of the speakers I saw just earlier today, I think it was talking about the trust relationship between banks and their business partners, commercial banks that do business with them or people. And so there's a trust relationship between corporate customers and the bank. And the idea here was to vet and onboard different people that do different services. So whether it's shipping, or payroll, or whatever other financial products that maybe the bank themselves don't offer. They vet and onboard these different API providers from these third parties into this API marketplace and have an identity service. And now when the corporate customers need these additional capabilities, they get some revenue distribution from these interactions, right? So monetization, everything I've spoken about, by the way, is monetization. So I have a very broad definition of monetization. It does not mean charging for APIs. And I've, again, got a paper on that. So we can talk about that some more if you like as well. This is another interesting one. It's a device scenario. So this is an automobile company. They are gathering data from the connected cars and providing that data to their own employees, but also to third parties as a monetization model for their APIs. And so getting additional revenue by selling data to third parties about what people are driving around and where they're going and things like that. So that could be good for marketing, it could be good for usage, it could be good for any number of different things, insurance, whatever it may be. This is a study that Emmanuel gave me this chart, so I really need to talk to Emmanuel a bit more about it. But I thought since it does show API usage here in Europe, it would be a good one to include here. I don't know the source of the data, but it does show usage in different industries for different use cases that this particular researcher has seen. And you can see a lot of variety here, right? So there's really so many tremendous different usage patterns and usage areas that companies can focus on with APIs. And so just a tremendous amount of use in Europe as well as other parts of the world, of course. So that was all the good news. Let me throw a little damper on some of this. So there's some things happening that are making things a little more challenging, right? So as we think about what's happening with microservices, with clouds, with this digital transformation, right? And so this flexibility, agility that we're trying to get from this is driving to a lot of components being distributed to a lot of different places. So in addition to your on-premise IT scenario, you'll have multiple clouds, you'll have private cloud potentially, and all of this stuff has to work together, right? So in general, companies will have 6 clouds over the long term. You may want to have one, and that's often a goal that I hear from businesses. They picked Amazon, or they picked Google, or they picked IBM maybe, whichever one you've picked. But then there's a valuable thing that some other cloud is providing, and you want that one. And the whole value proposition of cloud is to be able to do that, right? That you can onboard yourself and do something with a cloud provider that is not the chosen cloud that you've got. So people will end up with multiple different clouds, and they'll end up with multiple different data sources and a tremendous amount of IT investment to basically deploy all these things in all these different environments. And the problem with that is we have to integrate it all together. Because unless, it's not that just calling one API to get one thing from one of the clouds is going to solve the problem. We may need to get things from multiple different sources, as that just described. So Gartner did a paper on modernizing integration earlier this year and talks about how this has gone from a centralized, controlled, systematic perspective out to a much more agile type of environment where we can integrate at a much more dynamic mechanism. So I will have an article coming out, I think, this week in Integration Developer News that talks about this from the beginning to end. So you drive from applications being rewritten or at least partially rewritten maybe, as microservices and then deployed into different places, and you think you've solved your agility issue. But what you've ended up doing is having these things in different places that have to be integrated together. So the next thing we have to do is get the integration to be able to be deployed into the different places that it needs. So I have to be able to deploy the integration assets into Amazon and Google and IBM and so on. So how do I do that? I make the integrations microservices, right? So I've now got the integrations able to go near, as you guys described, near where the back-end service is, right? So I can move the integration to where it needs to be to do that, because I don't want to have something that's calling from Amazon to a ESB on-premise to then go back to Amazon to get something else, to then come on-premise to go get something from Google, right? That's just crazy, right? But if I can do this where the majority of the stuff is and maybe reach out to one other place, that's going to be a heck of a lot better scenario. Okay, great. Think we've solved it? Not quite yet, right? Because I have customers, and customers don't want to deal with the fact that every single time I move something from one place to another because it's a better place to be, that I have to change what I'm doing to call this new thing that's in a different place. And that's where the APIs come in, right? And so the API piece needs to be consumer-focused, not IT-focused. It needs to be also done as microservices so that you can deploy these wherever they need to be. So this is our strategy in IBM. So what we've done is take a look at a more holistic view of integration and come up with this picture, which is obviously, you could do an hour on this picture itself. But the idea is, first of all, that it's not just APIs and microservices, that there's still a lot of other stuff out there, right? From files to messages to events that are hitting now, all these different things that are coming in and being used in different places. So IBM's strategy for integration is we need to be where you need it to be. And that's not an IBM-only statement. So we love our IBM cloud. We'd love you all to be there. We know you're not all going to only be there, right? So we run on Amazon, we run on Google, we run on Azure, we run on-premise, we'll run in a private cloud, wherever it needs to be. Everything is going to be based on microservices. It may not all be there right now, but that's where we're heading. The idea of anything you want to come in with to anything you want to go out with multiple different types of integration as you need them, all wrapped around the security and the management and so on. So things like having a central place for management, which you, again, can choose where that will be, on-premise or in a cloud, any cloud, but managing the deployment of these things to wherever they need to be. And that's really what we're focused on in IBM right now. So with that, I want to leave you. I actually come in early. I don't know how that happened. But this is our blog site, our main site for our product. Our product name is API Connect. From this page, you can get a tremendous amount of resources, including if you like to try the product, you can log on to a cloud instance and try it right away. And the last 2 pages that I plan to show are all these links to the things that I've written over the last couple of years. So, so you see different categories on here. Some basics. You need to educate the business folks on what an API is or what's API economy. There's stuff like that. There's business value things. There's strategy, governance, and best practices. And then another page of architecture and technology, a few product things there, and then industry use cases. So that whole last column is industry use cases. For examples in the 7 categories that I spoke about for each one of the industries that are out there for you getting started. So that's it for me. Thank you all for hanging in. This is my first Nordic APIs conference. I do want to congratulate you guys. What a great job. Really fantastic conference. And all the speakers that I saw this week were really great. So I'm open for questions if you want to do that.
Yep, we got some time here. Do we have some questions for Alan? Quite expert here that we have a chance to take advantage of. Can I see a hand if we got a question for Alan? Don't leave us hanging, guys. I know it's late.
They're tired.
I know. I'm tired too, but come on. One question at least. What's your price for getting out? Give me a scapegoat. Here we are. Good man.
Yes. Hi. A question, because I read there was a news a few days ago that IBM has launched an open banking platform. Do you know a bit more about it?
I have heard the same thing. I actually work a lot with some of the guys on the open banking platform area. Of course, open banking here in Europe is tremendously more the central location for that. I do know that we're working a lot with the open banking people on that, and so there's a relationship there, but I'm not sure exactly what that relationship is. One of the main guys who works on our banking team that is talking to the lead open banking guy has asked me to do an interview with him. That hasn't been scheduled yet, but I'm hoping that I'll publish an interview with him on the open banking initiative and what they're doing. And you know, again, my role in this kind of an area is to be vendor independent and really treat open banking as open banking for any of the vendors that are in this space.
Super. Any others? Real quick. All right, gang. Oh, Alan, thank you so much.
You.
One more round of applause.